video, we're going to talk about how to format an MEE answer. So first of all, it's very important that you have a good organization and that you're formatting your MEE response appropriately. And the reason for this is because you have to know your audience. Graders for the MEE portion of the exam are usually grading using a checklist, and additionally, they usually have a lot of essays to grade. So what we find to be the most effective is if your essay is very organized and easy to read, it's likely going to be higher scoring. And that's because, again, they usually use a checklist to grade essays. So if they can quickly look at your essay response and put that up against the checklist and know that you're discussing everything you're supposed to touch upon, you're making their job really easy, and it's making it easy for them to give you points. Additionally, these graders usually have many essays to grade, and oftentimes in a short period of time, because they're working to get us back pass rates rather quickly. So this means these graders do not have a ton of time to read and to reread every single examinee's response. So again, if your essay is organized and clear and easy to grade, it makes it easy for them to get through it, and it's more likely to be higher scoring. So that's why it's so important you know how to format your response to the MEE. So let's talk about how to do that. The first step in having a good format or structure is to make sure you are reading the call of the question and your facts very carefully. Oftentimes, the call of the question tells you exactly what you need to talk about. And in fact, many times they have very pointed, enumerated questions that you're supposed to be responding to. So how do you structure your response to the call of the question or around the call of the question? We recommend that for each and every issue the question is asking you to address, you follow IRAC. So that means if there are 4 issues to discuss, you're going to have 4 IRACs. If you're not familiar with IRAC, that stands for Issue, Rule, Analysis, Conclusion format. So let's break each of those parts down. Your issues. A lot of people spend too much time coming up with and crafting these really long-winded, fancy issue statements. And some people are even taught to have a conclusion in their issue statement and go through the process of briefly applying the law to reach that conclusion for the issue. And that's very time-consuming. But you don't have to do this, which is great news. And the reason for it is because this is not a law school exam. In law school, issue spotting was impressive. And in fact, it was something that if you were good at it, would often yield a high score. Here, however, for bar purposes, the examiners are usually telling you exactly which issues you're supposed to be addressing. So having this really fancy issue statement is not impressive because they're telling you what to talk about. So for the I in IRAC or for your issue statements, let's say the question is asking you to analyze if a battery occurred. Your heading or issue statement could just say battery, and you could bold it and underline it, drawing that positive attention to it. Or if you feel more comfortable, you could pose it as a question. You could say, was there a battery? But again, I would urge you to bold it and underline it, again, drawing that positive attention to it so the grader knows exactly what you're talking about and that you've addressed that issue. So just to recap, we do not recommend long issue statements. Usually they are a waste of time because it's taking away that precious time that you could be allocating towards your analysis or your conclusion. So that short and to the point heading is key. Something else I want to bring to your attention, if you're using NCBE point sheets to grade your essays, which I hope you are, you'll notice that the NCBE oftentimes leads each issue statement with a conclusion. Please don't do that unless you're absolutely sure about the conclusion you've reached. We find that oftentimes when examinees reach the incorrect conclusion and they put it out there first thing, it leads to an even lower score than they deserve. And oftentimes, again, these graders are grading quickly. So if you lead with the wrong answer, they're not reading your rule and your analysis as closely as maybe they otherwise would have. So again, unless you're absolutely positively sure about your conclusion, don't lead with it in your heading or in your issue statement. So that brings us to the R of IRAC, the rule. So here, the whole purpose is coming up with a few sentences or a sentence, depending on the issue that's being tested, with the applicable rule. Your analysis. Your analysis here is kind of the heart of these IRACs, because your job is to make sure you've included all of the relevant facts and you're analyzing the issues that have been presented. I always recommend that if you have an extra maybe minute or two at the end of each question, to go back up to your fact pattern and see if you can add a sentence to your analysis for each of the issues posed. I call this kind of like beefing up your analysis, and this often is what separates a good answer from a great answer. Again, the beefier or the better or more inclusive that analysis is of all of those applicable facts, it's going to make your essays stand out. And then finally, the C of IRAC is your conclusion. So as I've already urged you, please only conclude one time unless you're absolutely positive of the conclusion. And your conclusion belongs at the end. Remember the order of IRAC: issue, rule, analysis, conclusion. Conclusion comes last. So we hope you found this video helpful about how to format an MEE response.